All right, guys, welcome back to the garage. We got a fun install plan today on the Ecoboost Swap Foxbody. I have a EPAS Performance power steering kit. This is an electric power steering kit. Not like the Volvo power steering pumps. This is an actual electric motor attached to the steering column. What they have here is our actual electric motor that goes on the steering column. All this is going to get adapted over. We have a control box here. Got some slight shipping damage. I guess it's supposed to have a little heat sink and a fan on top, but the fan has come off of the controller. And same with the pump, or not the pump, the motor. It also had a heat sink and a fan to go on it, but that has come off as well. I don't see any kind of adhesive or anything on this to hold that on. I don't know if I'm going to put these back on. Maybe just the heat sinks. The fans have pigtails on them, but no connections on any of this to power the fans. So might just stick the heat sinks back on. We'll figure that out when we get to it. We got a power lead for the control box and a couple of steering arms that we're gonna have to put in. We also have some hardware and a little tube of Loctite, along with a new firewall plate. This will be the new pass-through for the steering column. The first thing we have to do though is pull the old steering column and steering wheel out and get that out on the bench. So let's get to it. The first thing I'm going to do here is get the engine bay side stuff disconnected, which is the steering shaft that comes down through here. I have an aftermarket steering shaft which doesn't have a little rag joint in the middle. It's just a solid steering shaft. So I'm just going to unbolt a couple of these, get this all disconnected, and then move on to the interior. Now that we have the steering shaft in the engine bay taken out, let's go on to the interior and start getting this whole column out. I don't want to get my new steering wheel all messed up, so I'm just going to go ahead and set it off to the side for now and start removing these trim pieces here that we just put in last video. All right, so the forward-most screws are removed, and I have to remove two more further up underneath it. So, time to get uncomfortable. There's that. All right, now the column should be ready to come out. All right, now the steering shaft is out of the car, we're gonna do some disassembly on it because we're gonna be cutting this one up. So we'll remove the ignition cylinder first. Oh, I feel like I'm missing something here. What else? I might have to pull my adapter back off here. All right, so I got the whole steering shaft disassembled now. It's quite a pain. I even got the lock cylinder and the internal shaft out. But what I need to do now is go ahead to this first brace here. So this is the steering wheel side on this side, and then the firewall side on this side. So this first mounting point, I need to go an inch below this and chop it. So I've got this chopped off at the end. I went ahead and hit it with a grinder to clean it up, make sure there's no burrs on the inside or outside, because this is going to have to fit inside of the collar of the motor. Next up, I have to chop this down at 6 1/4 from the end. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark that and cut it now. so now that we have the steering column cut down, as well as I lost the steering shaft over here. Now that we have this cut down, as well as the actual steering shaft, I also went ahead and put in a small little cut for the set screw to land on. That's what they say to do. I'm not too sure about it, but I'm gonna go ahead and throw this all back together now. So insert this over here. I also drilled a small 1/2-inch hole inside of here, just an inch above where the bracket's at. That way I can tighten this set screw. Looks like it's a little bit off, but I should be able to tighten it from there. So I should be able to slide this back in here now. Okay, so I have some play here to adjust where the rod comes out at the far end. So I'm gonna try to guide that rod into this D slot here. Everything put back together. Kind of get an angle on this. It is nice that you can kind of see where the steering shaft is through this 1/2-inch hole. I should get it aimed correctly here. There, that seems a little better. All right, I'm back with keys to unlock my steering wheel. Stick that guy in there, there we go. So now I can see my set screw holes there. They said to put these in, but leave them loose for clocking purposes while it's in the car. So throw these two in here just for now. And then I will tighten up the two inside of here. Bit of a hassle, but now that I have this back together with the two set screws installed, let's probably turn to see them. But I have the two set screws installed back in here with the Loctite. So now I have to go install the firewall plate and then get this whole unit back in the car. So let's get this installed. All right, here we are roughly 3 hours later. This was not fun to put in. But let me show you guys what we have going on here. Flick a light on. So you can see our actual motors attached here. There's a bracket that runs up to the column support. I got all that in. This bracket did not fit very well. I actually had to replace this bolt here because it was not long enough to fit a nut on the other end of it. The other thing that their instructions and their videos don't say anything about is where to mount the controller. Let me get this up in here. So if you can see here, behind the center console, I put the controller. There's a stud right here that I mounted the controller to. I just have it mounted on the one side, but it's pretty steady. What I do need to do here though, afterwards, is get my 12-volt ignition on hooked up, and then there's also a 12-volt, I can't really see, and then there's also a 12-volt constant, which you can see that runs up over the steering column and around to the outside. And unfortunately, it is just not long enough, so I'll have to patch in. For right now, I'm just gonna run 2 smaller wires to cover that. I will in the future hook up a fuse in line with it, just in case anything shorts out there. I will have a fuse to not burn the car down. Before I go ahead and hook up the electronics and all the wiring stuff, I do need to attach the steering shaft to our manual rack. So I'll get back underneath here. They supplied all new, wherever I put it, they supplied all new U-joints and a new shaft that will be going in. So let's get that knocked out real quick. Well, that's fun. It looks like the two steering shafts want to occupy the same space. Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take probably an inch or so off the end of this and see if I can get to fit then. All right, after chopping a little bit off of that lower rod, everything seems to fit pretty good now. So I'm going to go ahead and snug everything up down here and see where we're at. Before I do all this, I probably should go back up top and make sure that the steering wheel is still straight. The wheels are still straight. I haven't moved those, but the steering wheel has been rotated quite a few times. So let me check that first. All right, everything's straight up top. So I'm gonna go ahead and cinch these down. All right, I got everything finally put back together. Oh, and technically working, but I found a slight issue. So let's close the door so we don't get that beep. Ignition on. Car doesn't have to be on for this to work. I currently have power steering now, which is great, except for if you watch my column as I steer, the column is moving up and down. So something in here is not straight. I gotta take a look and go back through everything again because something's out of alignment. I can't leave it like this.
1 week later.
I'm back in the garage a week later. I don't know if you could tell in the last clip, but I was pretty frustrated with how this whole steering install was panning out. What I had found out after getting everything assembled was that this shaft here that connects the power steering motor to, well, through the firewall and then to the rest of the steering shaft, this is not straight. It has about a 3/8 deflection at the end compared to the other end. So whenever I would steer, the entire shaft would wobble up and down and move the entire steering column up and down. So I reached out to EPAS Performance. They said, send us pictures and send us your address and we'll ship a new one out. So I took pictures of this, took pictures of the bent angle of it, and no response. So I ordered some new stuff from Summit, which was this adapter here, which adapts 36 spline over to double D shaft, and I ordered a 36-inch length of double D shaft. I should have measured twice before I ordered this because this is like 18 millimeter, where this one's 16 millimeter. So I'm back to using this one. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna chuck this up in my press and see if I can't bend it straight again. This is 3/4 of an inch of steel, so I don't know if I'll have much luck with that, but that's what we're gonna try. Just to give you guys a better idea of what the deflection is, this is with it flat on the table on the one side, and then if I roll it 180 and press down, it doesn't come up at all. So it's got about that much deflection, so it's not straight. I think I nailed it first shot. So you can see if I spin this 180 degrees, we have roughly the same amount of clearance on both ends. It still looks a little bit bent down here. Can't really see very well, but I think as long as this end and this end are, straight through, it should be all right. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this back in now and report back to you guys. All right, everything's back together. Excuse the battery charger. The power steering that I was testing was kind of draining the battery quite a bit. Let's go take a look at what we have. So all in all, considering all the pain that I went through, I feel like this is a pretty clean install. You can't see any of the power steering components from outside the car unless you're really underneath it, and then you can see the motor tucked away up in there. Hop in here. I have the controller tucked in behind the radio with everything wired up. It's getting its 12-volt signal with the key on from the actual ignition stock. So if we turn it on, after about 5 seconds or so, we can hear the controller for the power steering click on, and now we have power steering. So I can steer with 2 fingers now. This is still a manual steering rack, so that's what they recommend, not to use a power steering rack and then loop it or do anything like that. Just use a manual rack. That's what I already had, so it worked out best. I have power steering, and they have, it's kind of hard to see, a little potentiometer down here that you can adjust to adjust the level of power steering that you get. You can also get GPS ones that will lower the power steering effort as you increase speed. So basically, as soon as you get going, it almost disables the power steering. You can see this is a little bit harder now to steer, but in parking lots and stuff, you can turn it up and have really easy power steering. I did notice that it is draining the battery and putting quite a bit of a load on the battery, so that'll be a thing to keep an eye on, not steering a whole bunch with the car not turned on. But once the car is running, it doesn't seem to affect it at all. So final thoughts now that everything's wrapped up and fully installed. I can't recommend this EPAS Performance kit to anybody. This kit was $1,500, and it had quite a few things that I had to make, modify, cut. It was just a lot for what was supposed to be a bolt-in kit. I would suggest, if you want to go the electric power steering route, that you contact somebody like even Ant Power Steering, the people that make the ECU for this car. They have steering modules that will hook up to, I think, Prius and some other cars' power steering unit, and you can fully DIY that for quite a bit less than what this cost. And I had to do a lot of DIYing on this. So final words: don't buy this. Let me be the fool that spends the money and figures out that this isn't really worth it. But we'll see you guys next time. My turbo is on the way, so it should be here tomorrow or at some point this weekend. And then next week, we should hopefully be getting into the turbo install. Tune's here, it's ready to go, so I'm excited.